Everybody, my name is Steve Akley. Welcome to Virtual Bourbon. This is our latest event, and we've got a fun one here. We're going to be trying some 1990s Bourbon Deluxe. That's just okay. But the cool one is we've got some Four Roses from 1970s. Wait a minute, you may be saying they didn't sell bourbon in the 1970s, and you're not wrong. They didn't sell it domestically, but they were exporting it the whole time. We're going to tell the story of that and how all this came about and how I was able to get a bottle of this and why I wanted to do it so much. And I've tried a lot of things from the world of bourbon. I've never tried Four Roses from the 70s, 80s, 90s, even up until they came back into the U.S. And the products that have been available to the U.S., I certainly have tried. I've tried some vintage stuff, but never anything when it was export only. So this is going to be a really fun one for me. So hopefully it is for you guys as well. I'd like to give you guys a little bit of background about both of these. Not a whole lot on Bourbon Deluxe. I mean, that was a product that's been around for a while. It was pre-Prohibition era. I don't even know what distillery made it. It was part of, as Prohibition hit, 7 distillers combined and got a medicinal license. So they came under the name the American Medicinal Spirits Company. So these 7 distilleries got together. They actually ran their corporate out of National Distillers offices. So National kind of was in charge, and these 7 distilleries, one of them, like I said, had Bourbon Deluxe, and it was Bourbon Deluxe was a whiskey that you could get during Prohibition as a medicinal whiskey. And if you search the internet, you can see some really cool old bottles of it from that era. It had a really, really neat look to it for sure. I have an old bottle just after Prohibition. I collect some bottles, and by chance, I happen to have both of the ones that were featured from kind of the same era, the 30s, 40s, that type of thing. This is Bourbon Deluxe. You can't really see it. It has a metal inset in there that says Bourbon Deluxe, and nice bottle. You probably can't see this either, but it says Bourbon Deluxe big. It's in the bottle there. It's just a lot of feel to the bottle. It's a kind of a neat one for sure, and it has a little shot glass on the top, which I guess was common for the era because Four Roses, again, from the same era, also had the shot glass on the top. So just 2 that I happen to have. And I thought, I'll bring those both up since they fit in today. So, but after Prohibition, it became a national distillers brand. They're the ultimate name that emerged from those 7 distilleries that became the national distillers. And they had a lot of different products. They were a big time player. Ultimately, they did run into financial issues and ended up getting sold to Jim Beam for $545 million, which included all the brands. It included 3 different distilleries, which Beam abruptly closed. But it was Bourbon Deluxe became a Beam brand, and this is the bottle that we'll be drinking from today. This is an export. Again, I bought it with the Four Roses. Opportunity came up to get both, so I went ahead and did that because I thought it'd be good for this class. With the fact that it was after Prohibition and Beam had it, this is likely made at the Claremont distillery. They were making it at the Old Crow distillery, which is one that Beam shut down then. So they owned the Old Crow distillery. They shut, which they don't own it any longer. They do store some bourbon there, as we know. Famously had that fire not that long ago there, where they still store some things, but they have sold that off. But so they halted production there and made Bourbon Deluxe at Claremont. So more than likely, this is probably mid 90s. So, and it's a 4-year-old product. So you're talking it would have been made at Claremont, not at the Old Crow distillery. So that's just a little bit of background about Bourbon Deluxe. It was never a very popular brand. It never took off. I guess they were trying to make it an upper tier 1 national distillers was. It never really met that. And I was amazed to see how many different companies utilize this. And they're always so willing to sue each other. It's amazing that there's been no lawsuits around this. So this is Bourbon Deluxe, so a brand name owned by Jim Beam, formerly National Distillers. Not to be confused with Walker's Deluxe Bourbon, which was Hiram Walker's bourbon that they made in Peoria, Illinois at a distillery. Also not to be confused with Heaven Hill Ultra Deluxe Bourbon, which is a product that they used to have, no longer make. And then I saw there was even a Buchanan's Deluxe Scotch whiskey. So I guess that name Deluxe they think conveys something special, and a lot have used it. But again, it's kind of surprising that it didn't result in any sort of lawsuits, especially though, Walkers with their deluxe bourbon and Bourbon DeLuxe. It's just transposing the two words there. But no sort of the issues that I found. So, but that's a little bit about Bourbon DeLuxe, and we'll try both of these together in just a second. But that'll be the one we try first. The one with the real interesting history is Four Roses, and like so many things in bourbon, especially prior to the 20th century, not a lot of things were written down and kept track of. We do know that Paul Jones Jr. Was the guy who started what would become the Four Roses Distillery. That was just a brand for him. His company ultimately would be known as the Frankfurt Distilling Company when they bought that out in 1922. But initially he had been, or his family bought that out. He had already been deceased, but he initially was a grocer in Atlanta. And at that time, again, source products, things like that, there's really no such thing. They would buy barrels of whiskey and sell it themselves. And he was making more off whiskey than he was the grocery. So he decided to get into the whiskey business. So he was in Atlanta with this grocery store. He decided to move to Louisville and open up a spot on Whiskey Row. He did that in 1884. In 1888, a couple things happened. A distillery was started called the Four Roses Distillery. It wasn't called Four Roses. It was called, let's see if I can find it here. I don't, maybe I didn't write that down, but it was a distillery was started by a guy by the name of Rufus Rose and his brother and their two sons. And they were going to come out with a brand called Four Roses. Because their people are Four Roses. But Paul Jones Jr., who famously, we have that story that he had asked a Southern Belle, for her hand in marriage, and if she would say yes, she would show up to this big gala and wear Four Roses on her dress. And she did show up and she had the Four Roses on there. But again, I think that's just probably a story because Paul Jones Jr. never did get married. He was a lifelong bachelor, so that never happened. But he used that story to get the trademark to the name Four Roses Bourbon, and said that he had actually been buying bourbon and branding it Four Roses going all the way back to the 1860s. Which is probably hard to believe that for 24 years he did that, never tried to trademark it or anything like that. But ultimately, he was the first one to put it in, and selling whiskey under that name, he was able to get the name Four Roses. So that became their big product. And it also was a medicinal whiskey, and it was sold through Prohibition. So it survived and came out of that. And in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it became the largest selling bourbon in the world. So literally, it was number one. But so a couple things happened. A big mistake by Four Roses. They had been bought out in 1943 by Seagram's. Paul Jones Jr. had passed away. His nephew had taken over the company. He also passed away. So without family lineage anymore, the people who were running the company decided to sell out to Seagram's. And again, it was on a good run. It was the number one bourbon, so I'm sure they got great money at the time. They sell out, and Seagram's takes over. Initially, Seagram's doesn't do anything, just kind of keeps things rolling. But in 1945, because Seagram's was such into blended whiskey, and that's where they were really growing as a company based on that. Coming out of Prohibition, people's tastes had changed a little bit. They were used to either drinking that softer whiskey from Canada that was brought in illegally during Prohibition, and many times, things that were made like cocktails and stuff like that. So a little bit more harsh bourbon they weren't interested in. They wanted something smoother, and blends were very trendy, and that's Seagram's was the leader in that. So they elected in 1945 to come out with a Four Roses blended whiskey. Now, at the time, this was a very good product. It was 100% American whiskey, so just a true blend of whiskeys. Today, you could sell that and call it a blended whiskey, and it would probably be pretty good. And it was good back then. And it didn't knock off Four Roses, but it did cut into its market share some. So by the late 50s, Four Roses was starting to go down a little bit, and this blended whiskey was on the uprise. And they made a strategic decision to take Four Roses bourbon grow the company. They thought they could sell as much, if not more, by exporting it and selling it abroad. And then they could just take Four Roses, rebrand it so that the blended whiskey looked almost exactly like the Four Roses bottle. This is our vintage bottle that we're drinking tonight. Kind of looked like that, but then they just changed the little wording where it said bourbon and put blended whiskey. Now, that probably wouldn't be the demise of the brand because it was a very good product when it was at 100% blended American whiskey. But another thing they did as a cost-cutting measure, they took most of the whiskey out of there. They were doing a 66% neutral grain spirits blend. So, and then the rest was whiskey. So only about 1/3 of it was actually whiskey at that point. The rest was basically vodka. Neutral grain spirits is basically, coming off the still high enough to strip out as much flavor as possible. Basically like just vodka. So they literally started to go downhill pretty quickly then. And they got a very bad name. Again, the bottle looked exactly like it. It looked like Four Roses bourbon, but it tasted bad. It didn't taste the same. So the brand really got a bad reputation, and it would ultimately lead to the company basically just being about out of business. Jim Rutledge, who had gone to work for the company in 1966 for Seagram's, his lifelong dream was to bring Four Roses back to prominence. It was already sliding downhill pretty badly by the time he started there, and then he got to see the thing where it totally was, just an export. And his dream was always to do that, but his role had changed. Even though he was in research and development and production, he would get promoted and sent to New York to work for Seagram's corporate, which I can't believe. I know Jim Rutledge pretty well at this point. And Jim Rutledge is not a corporate suit type of guy, but that's what he did. He oversaw, cost savings and knew the distillery operations well and knew how to save money and things like that. And he helped them streamline that and kind of help keep things going. Ultimately, those Seagrams, of course, would have financial issues. They would go out of business. And the Four Roses name would get traded a couple times. It would go to Pernod Ricard, then Diageo, and then finally it would go to Kirin, a Japanese company, which was very fond of, was a #1 market for Four Roses bourbon. So it made sense for them to buy that brand, and it was export only at that time. And their plans were to fully keep it like that. Jim Rutledge talked them into doing a couple things. Number one, this idea of get rid of that blended whiskey. It's bad. No, it's damaging the brand as a whole. And if we want to grow the brand, even internationally, we need to get rid of that. So they did that. To their credit, they pulled that blended whiskey off the shelves and actually bought back from the distributors any stock that they could get. So they tried to make it just disappear. And then Jim began working on Four Roses, and with the idea of making the best exported bourbon that he could, but trying to get it back into the U.S. And how he was finally able to convince, he kept asking for him to do it. They kept saying no every time. And then finally, as the quality started going up and the whiskey became better, he said, it's not fair for our employees who work so hard to make this product good. They can't even buy it themselves because it's not sold anywhere in the U.S. And Kirin agreed to allow Four Roses to be sold in Kentucky only. It became a Kentucky only product. And Jim knew once they got it there, he was able to, once he had it back in the hands of the fans, that he would be able to grow it. And that's what happened. And, it's an award-winning bourbon. It's great. Jim ultimately retired in 2015. But, most of the Four Roses stuff that we're trying today is stuff that Jim made. And, I just think he's one of the greatest distillers that we've ever had. And, I know he's still working on a distillery. Matter of fact, he's working on some projects now, releasing another whiskey that'll be coming out soon. And he's still doing things in the business. So it's good to see that. And he is certainly a great guy. So that brings us to this. Again, this bottle that we have here is from the 70s. And I go to a lot of bourbon parties, and I'm in a club and all this kind of stuff, and they find all kinds of Dusties and things like that. No one's ever brought to our events, and I've never got to try it. I don't know very many people that have tried some of the Four Roses from the 70s. So again, it's 6 years age stated. It is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. So it is not, and it is marked for export only on the label. So there are our two whiskeys, a little intro and information about them. I think let's pour some. We're going to start with the Bourbon Deluxe though. So we don't get to go to that Four Roses just yet. So go ahead and pour that out. I think we want to nose and taste, share some information. And then I think, as we're talking about them, we want to go back to both of them too, because it's good to revisit these, because I'm just pouring mine now, but then, once it has some air on it too, does that change? So we'll taste each of these 2 times. So first one on the Bourbon Deluxe, again, from 1990s. Again, this is I think it's always fair to compare something versus what it is. It's always, you can't judge something against the best bourbon of all time when it's a low priced product that comes in at 80 proof. So basically we know going in, this isn't going to be the best bourbon we ever had, but what do we think of it? I think that's what we're trying to find out here. So what do you guys get on the nose as you smell that one?
Sourdough bread.
Sourdough bread. Okay. I think that's good. It's definitely not any sort of spice to it for sure. Candied apples I see from Tim there. That's probably pretty good too. There's a little bit of a nose on it. Not much though. And there's not a whole lot of jumping out of there.
Yeah, a little butter. I like that butter yeasty bread.
Okay.
Nose. Yeah, I like that.
Butter yeasty bread. Okay. That's good. I do like that. Well, let's give this one a taste and see what we think on the initial taste here. Candy corn on the nose from Dan. What do you guys think on the taste there? Like I said, I didn't pick up any spice on the nose, but there is some spice to it on the taste for sure, which I think would be to be expected. What else are you guys getting on this one?
I've got these beautiful, it's like a beautiful symmetrical legs on the globe of the Glencairn. It's unbelievable, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's fading pretty quick, but boy, it's gorgeous. I don't see that very often, to be honest with you.
So it's got some viscosity there, which is something that's always desirable. I think that typically leads to a little bit more of the spiciness too. It seems like if it coats your mouth a little bit, that you do pick up those type of notes a lot more. Mild taste, a little buttery, good mouthfeel.
Yeah, I get the buttered corn. Seems like a green corn.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Sweet and spicy.
Sweet and spicy, yeah. Yeah. Buttered corn muffins. So, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's maybe a corn.
Corn, yeah. It's not bad. I mean, it's really not bad. So I would buy that as a cheaper bottle. I don't know if they'd ever sell that again, but it's not bad. 4-year-old. It is age stated, 4 years.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you'd get in a very young, grain forward whiskey.
Yeah. It's
very balanced.
Color wise, kind of a light orange. So, all right, let's move on to the star of the show here. This one's exciting. 1970s era. Four Roses bourbon. A lot different on the color on this one. I mean, you see that right away. It's darker. It is 6 years, so 2 more years. But get more into the amber colors and things like that. This was distilled by Ova Haney, so he's an interesting guy too. He was Four Roses distiller, during the good times, and he was also there as they started to evolve from whiskey to the blended whiskey, and he was not happy about that. He was notoriously famous for getting in arguments with the accountants, the people who were pushing those type of things. And that's ultimately why he cut his career a little short. He just said he couldn't take dealing with people who didn't make whiskey, telling him how to make whiskey to save money. So Ova Haney left the company, and that's when Jim Rutledge then took over from him. So, but this would have been distilled by Ova Haney. So, Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but he and he's not really. Not a lot of people talk about him anymore. It's kind of like a forgotten person in bourbon, but he shouldn't be. He was a great distiller for sure. All right. On this one, what do we think? We got Werther's caramel, coffee. That's good.
Kind of like that ribbon candy you get at Christmas.
The ribbon candy you get at Christmas.
Weird,
That doesn't sound like a very happy Christmas to me, Danny. Ribbon candy, okay.
Yeah, I really get the sweetness. It's
Yeah.
like somewhere between like a cotton candy and fruity pebbles. That's what it reminds me of when I smell it. Like, get that caramel and then a little bit of floral fruit or something that does that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just delicious. You don't smell that very often.
Yep. Seeing some good stuff coming in. Butterscotch, Bitto honey, which I think is a good one. Vanilla and caramel. Yeah. All right. Let's do this. Cheers, everybody. Yeah. That's good. That's liquid caramel. Sea salt. Spicy. Nice finish. Not overly long on the finish, but good. That is solid. That's a sipper for sure. What are you guys getting on the taste?
Pretty much the same as the nose, but more intensified.
Okay. Don, how about you? Mr. Matejo. There you go.
I'm drawing a blank on the notes here.
Okay. The spicy does stick around a little bit, which is cool, which is very good. Jacob, how about you, man?
I believe it or not, sort of get the ribbon candy on the finish. That
Okay.
cinnamon. There's a hard candy at the end that's not a Werther's. It's not a caramel. There's some spice to it.
Okay. See, Danny, you were on top of it. Wild Bill, what do you think, man?
Man, I just like it.
Well, you like it, huh? Well, guess what I've got? I got a bottle of 1980s Four Roses I just picked up. Maybe a future event if we like this one. I didn't know what I was going to do with it depending on how this one turned out, but this is cool. It's got an old sticker on here too. I guess it was the names of the guy who owned it, or Andy and Karen, I guess. May 1987. So this might have been, who knows, a wedding gift or something. I don't know, but it says right on there, May 1987. So
That's real cool.
yeah. So I was real happy to pick that one up. But like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do with it until I at least tried this, because I've never tried. Has anybody here tried Four Roses from the 60s, 70s, 80s?
No.
Yeah. I really, as I promoted this event, there was a couple people that said they had tried it. But for the most part, it's something that's just lost on us. So this is really a neat experience to be able to try something that, again, wasn't available. And I've had to buy these in Europe. So because they weren't over here. So unless someone would have brought it back, that's be the only way you find it. So I've been lucky enough to get some in through a company that sells back here to the States from Europe, which is cool.
I tell you, Steve, when you go back to the nose on that deluxe, you can really pick up the corn versus the true bourbon characteristics
Okay.
with the Four Roses.
Yeah, let's officially do that. Let's go back to our Bourbon Deluxe, because I think that's fun too. It's had some time, and then you also got the true compare and contrast thing going on now. What do we think on the second round here? Yeah,
Yeah. Heavy corn.
heavy corn.
Mhm.
Yeah. On the taste. It's definitely a little bit sweeter than, but just sweet to be sweet, kind of sugary sweet type of taste, I think, up front. And then it does yield to a little spiciness there. Buttered popcorn.
Definitely buttery.
Yeah, it lacks a taste compared to the Four Roses. I agree. So we're not doing it any favors, though, putting it next to the Four Roses, I don't think. So,
But that's really striking because oftentimes I'll taste things side by side and I really struggle separating out whether it be a nose or a palate issue. But putting these side by side, you definitely can separate out that difference, that corn, that grain, that sweet deluxe comes through versus the caramel and a little bit of spice and what you've got with that Four Roses, which is fantastic.
yeah. Grain forward. I agree. This is not much there compared to the Four Roses. All right. It's fun to see too, because it's actually good to see. Actually, I think, Ova Haney, who was dealing with all these things that he didn't like, was in the, doing what he loved, making whiskey, but doing it in a way that he didn't like. He had to make that blended whiskey, put all that together too. And that's going out under his name as a master. So he wasn't happy about it. But it's good to see that he's still putting his heart and his passion into this, even though he's not happy about it's not being sold in the United States. It's good that he was still, making good stuff. And that's really a cool thing. Yeah, too bad. The Four Roses, it was probably mixed. You're right. Probably in cocktails, things like that. Yeah. Bourbon Deluxe wouldn't be bad for $20 today. Yeah. I think that would be about where it needs to come in if it would make a comeback, or less, kind of in that maybe even the $15, which is, I don't know, the super value range right now, because you can get some things $15.
$10.
You can get some for 10. You can get some for $8, or I don't know. Gosh, I saw a McCormick that was like $6 the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Feel the old Weller niche. Yep. All right, let's revisit the one that we got excited about here, the Four Roses. Let's go back to that one. I'm gonna clear the old palate first. Get some water.
The Four Roses has a little bit of that same smell that we get from the decanters and such.
Yeah.
A little bit of that musty smell.
A little bit, yeah. That you're looking for from your old bourbon.
Right.
That famous musty smell. Yeah, boy, it got even better on the nose. Coming back to, I don't know if it's the compare and contrast or just getting some air to it, but man, it smells like I don't know, with some of those caramel popcorns. It smells like one of those to me.
Cracker Jack.
Even the what's the ones that's next up after popcorn? What's that?
Fiddle Faddle.
Fiddle faddle.
Yeah, like Fiddle Faddle. It's like a little bit higher end one. Cracker Jack tends to be a little bit kind of one note, whereas the Fiddle Faddle's got more going on. I don't know why we're talking tasting notes on that, but yeah, but there's something more.
It's fun to bring out those childhood memories with bourbon. It's just that's the beauty of it. That's
Mhm.
I'm getting a lot of vanilla off this one now.
Yeah.
And some hint of kind of like salted caramel.
Hint. Okay.
Can't get the vanilla.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
My wife tried it. She said she picks up raisins on the Four Roses.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's solid. Yeah. All right, Dan Terbush, you said that you've got some Four Roses yellow label there. This is would be the equivalent of that, I guess. Though this is 86 proof. What you've got there is 80 proof. But you're saying the 70s blows it out of the water?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lot better.
That's good to hear.
It just has more depth of flavor. I mean, is the yellow label also aged 6 years? Because I mean, even the color, the 1970s is darker. Now I don't know if that's just because it's aged for 50 years, but
no, I don't think that the current yellow Four Roses. I think that's more along the lines of that 4-year mark.
that's what I was thinking.
Where you're pulling that from. So you got a couple more years on this one.
That last taste, I agree with Don. I get a little briny, get a little bitty late brine on that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That salty brine, yeah.
Al Young is smiling wide this evening. Yes, yes. If Al Young would still be around, we would have had him on this event and to join us for sure. So Al was a good friend. Always, helped me out with stuff. He came on our podcast. We did a movie that Al is in. The last time he ever did a movie is in our movie, Blending is Trending. He's great in that. Just was an amazing person, a great ambassador for his brand and for the industry in general. Somebody like that. I mean, Al was a amazing person for sure. Tough loss last year with losing Al Young. So, but yeah, one of the all-time greats. But yeah, he could be Al. What was great about Al, he was at that age too, where as great as he was, he could be a little cranky sometimes. So, it was so we're filming here's a quick Al story. It's one I've never even told before. So even if you listen to the podcast, you haven't heard this. So, of course, when you get a bottle, it's got the plastic around the neck and all that. They don't have the obviously the tax stamps or anything. Some do a faux tax stamp now, but not Four Roses doesn't. But lined up in front of Al was the 4 items that they sell as he was talking. So you got the yellow label, small batch, single barrel, and the new one. And so Al's getting ready to talk, and the PR person comes over and says, "Hey, we gotta open those. You gotta cut that plastic off." And I was like, "I'm not drinking these or anything. We're not opening this up. It's just a waste." And she's like, "No, you can't be on camera talking with bottles that are obviously never been opened. You have to, that's a PR rule. The bottles have to be opened." And he's like, "I don't care about the PR rules." So they ultimately opened the bottles, but he was not happy about that. But yeah. So that was, and me and the camera guy, Bo, we're right in the middle of this. We don't care either way. I don't care if the bottles are closed, open, or it doesn't matter to us at all. But so they're fighting over whether or not the bottles should be popped open. So, but they did, and they Brent Elliott brought out an old Dusty too, from like his personal collection, and said that we could open that up and try some old Four Roses. I don't think it was as old as this, but it was stuff that would have been export only, and Al did say no to that too. He's like, "No, we're going to put that into the Four Roses museum inventory." I'm like, shit, I wanted to try that. So yeah, it was close, but yeah, that was as close as I ever got to trying old Four Roses, but did not happen. So, but that was good stuff. Any other thoughts on taste on this? Should we do one with the 80s bottle?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right. Well,
Just wish you would have sent me a bigger sample.
There's no limit on the number of tickets you could buy. So, right, Bill? Bill's no, like when we had the Chessman one, Bill bought all the tickets, I think, but like 2. So, yeah. And then he's been on me to get him a Chessman, but the guy that I used to get him from, he doesn't have them anymore. So we'll see. I know, Rick, you've met the guy before, Mikey from St. Louis. It's in the Bourbon Club.
Yep.
He's the one who used to get those Chessmen, but he doesn't have any right now. But he'll probably get some more at some point.
Yeah, he gave me a half a bottle of C&G.
Really? Yeah, yeah. He's very, very generous.
Yeah, I was talking about something, and somebody pointed out, there was a bottle on the bar,
Mhm.
and I said, "Oh yeah, like that's what I drank when I was in high school,
Yeah.
And when I was getting ready to leave, it's like, "Aren't you gonna take that bottle with you?" I go, "What? Oh, Mike left that for you."
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I see one of the comments. We will do an event with the Four Roses from the 1980s, and I will pair that based on a comment here. Some people are saying they want to try the Four Roses Super Premium, the Japanese only. I do have a bottle of that. So my daughter went to Japan, just like last Thanksgiving, so not even quite a year ago. She went over to Japan. I gave her a list of stuff, and we're trying a couple of the items. Evan Williams and one of the other ones too, Evan Williams and a wild turkey that she got there, and then I held back the Japanese one, the Four Roses Japanese export only. So we'll pair those together. We'll do the 80s and then the super premium. So that should be a cool event. So.
Yeah, Steve, I was just about to ask you, we'd kind of prepped with the platinum, the super premium, just because we didn't have anything lower proof from a Four Roses perspective.
Mm-hmm.
See if you kind of knew what the difference would in terms of the distillate or the recipes that went into that. That would be very, very interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I can find out some more information. Four Roses is very good to me and what we do. Their PR people like us, and we get pretty well free access. So we've got an amazing event lined up. Once they allow people to come back to the distillery, right now they can't have any visitors. They won't even let media come in or anything. But we've lined up a deal to do a show where we get to try some of the old stock of Four Roses. So they've always got barrels that are 22, 23, 24 years old that they then put, maybe like a barrel into something just to kind of change the flavor profile, give a little bit more depth to, one of the fall releases or something like that. But Brent Elliott said we could come in and try, a bunch of those barrels, which to me sounds like better than Disney World, man. It sounds pretty amazing. So yeah, we're gonna be doing that whenever we can get back there. So yeah, the wild turkey, that's the one we've got. We got the wild turkey 13 and an event coming up paired with Evan Williams 12, the red label that they do sell in their gift shop, and the Evan Williams Experience, not Heaven Hill gift shop, but the Evan Williams Experience gift shop. So we've got those two. That's an event that's already out there, but the other one, I'll have to see. It may be February when we do it, which sounds like a long way away. It'll be here before we know it, though. We're got to pretty much try to get everything lined out so it's just out there as much as possible. And then it's tough to add things in, but I think that's when we'll probably have to do this other one, probably in February. But that's okay. It'll be, like I said, comes around before you know it. Any other questions before we wrap things up? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn off the recorder because we do record this again for people that can't attend. There's probably only about half the people that bought a ticket to this. Again, makes some sense. It's a product that a lot of people haven't tried. Probably many people just bought it because they wanted to be able to try the whiskey, didn't care about the event at all. But in case someone missed it that wanted to see it, I go ahead and record it. But I'm going to stop that now. But I am going to stick around if anybody has any questions about bourbon or anything like that. But I'm going to say goodbye to our video audience right now.